Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Hometown Heroes. I'm Mike Kenichi, and I'm real excited today. Got a very special guest. He is actually, he just finished his sophomore year at Western New England University. We're going to talk about that a lot. We're going to talk about as far back as when he was 4 years old. So it's a real honor to have on. He's a graduate of Derby High School, the one and only Jimmy Silkoff. And Jimmy, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor.
It's not a problem.
So, Jimmy, let me ask you. I believe you started playing t-ball at the age of 4 years old.
Around that, yeah.
So let me ask you, how did the love for baseball begin? I mean, was your father a big fan of baseball? Did he kind of get you into it? I mean, did you love baseball right away, or did it take some time?
So it did take a little bit of time, but we used to always watch the Yankees play on the TV, and I've just really loved it ever since.
Right. So let me ask you, what was the first year? Like, I know it's hard to remember. You're talking about almost 20 years ago, but
Yeah.
I mean, did you enjoy t-ball? I mean, that's a great introduction and a great way to learn how to play, but did you have fun doing it?
Yeah, I had a pretty good time playing t-ball. Like, it was fun. I didn't really know what was going on at that point in time, but I had a good time.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy. Your dad coached you for most of your little league career. And I know we talked about this kind of off air a little bit. He wasn't like the type of father to favor his son. If anything, he was probably harder on you because he knew that you had to understand that he wasn't dad when he was coaching you. He was coach, and you had to, make sure you understood that part of it.
No, yeah, he was harder on me than most of the other kids on the team just because he wanted to show that he was the coach and not my dad on the field.
Right. And let me ask you, Jimmy, going back to your little league days, I mean, obviously you had some great memories and we'll get to those, but you were also able to meet some of your closest friends there as well, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, talk about that, because if nothing else, whether uh, you had a real good career, so career, meeting those friends and having those friendships is probably something that impacted you your entire life.
Yeah, so I met most of my friends that I still have to this day in Little League, and it carried out through other sports as well, like football and even basketball, like rec league. And
Right.
I still hang out with them. I can't really do it as much because of college, but
Right.
whenever I get the chance, I do.
Right. And I mean, just talk about that though. One of the guys that I know you've been close with your entire life is Jeff Polis, and you guys played football together. I'm sure at times you played basketball together, and obviously you played baseball together, which we'll talk about your high school career more. But I'm sure being elected captain with Jeff and of course Bryce Cotter as well, your senior year, had to be something special to you, not just because you were captain, but also that you got to do that with them as well.
Yeah, it was pretty special to me because I got to be up there and lead the team with one of my best friends, Bryce and Jeff. So it was a good year. We didn't have the best record, but we had a good time playing.
Right. So, Jimmy, let me ask you this. You grew up going to Bradley School in elementary school, and, I was fortunate enough to go there as well. Just a great school. And talk about those years at Bradley School, because, I mean, just being a kid and growing up in Derby and stuff like that, going to Bradley School had to be one of, your favorite moments as a kid.
Yeah, Bradley School is a really good school. I haven't been there in years, but I drive past it a lot. And I remember some days, I remember it was either fourth or fifth grade when they were teaching about cicadas and how they were coming out of the ground every 17 years. That's probably as far back as I can remember, though, fifth grade. I was actually at the Boys and Girls Club after school as well.
Right. Which, if I remember correctly, Bryce and Jeff both attended the Boys and Girls Club. So you guys were able to be together a lot and spend a
Yeah.
lot of time together. So, I mean, right there alone, I mean, like I said, just your childhood was very good. You got to meet some great friends and do a lot of great things, not just with sports, but just being a kid in general.
Yeah, I got to hang out with him outside of school, inside of school, really anywhere I went.
Right, exactly. So, Jimmy, let me ask you this. We talked about Little League, and I think one year might have been your last year. You hit about 8 home runs that year, and if I'm not mistaken, two of them cleared the pine trees. So, I mean, that had to be a tremendous feeling for you. And just talk about what the thrill is like when number one you hit that first home run that you ever hit in your career, and what was that feeling like when you were rounding the bases?
So I remember when I hit that first home run of my career, usually people like do a little trot around the bases. I was full on sprinting around the bases because of how excited I was. My coach, I'm pretty sure I remember it was Coach Rob Heider. When I was rounding third, he was like, "Slow down." It was yeah, I was running probably the fastest they've ever seen me run around those bases.
Right. And Jimmy, one of the things though, about hitting home runs though is it's a great feeling. Number one, like you said, you got to run around the bases, you get to take that moment in and sinks in, but it's also a great feeling because you kind of realize that you've gotten better and better as each year has gone on, because maybe your first couple of years you didn't hit any home runs, but as time went on, you worked hard, you did what you had to do to better yourself. So that alone had to be so invaluable to you that you were able to get moments like that.
Yeah, it was. The reason I was able to as well because I used to swing with one hand. I would release and hit with one hand. And my coach, Ron Russell, he told me to hold on the bat like full way through with both hands,
Right.
and it worked. So
Yeah, and it's I'm glad you brought him up, Jimmy, because I was going to mention him at some point, and I know how much he meant to you, not only as a coach, but just as a mentor, a father figure as well, like a second father. And I mean, just talk about him a little bit and the how he impacted you throughout your life.
so he was a big impact in my life. He still is, and we would always go down to his house when we were just messing around during the summer. Even if we just wanted a milkshake, we would go down there and he'd make us milkshakes. It was probably one of the best times of my life when he was around. He was
And
always like a party.
right. And Jimmy, he really loved Derby too. And
Yeah.
ironically, I think he was a Shelton High graduate, but he coached in Derby for so many years. His kids went to Derby, and he really embraced Derby. So they took the Shelton kid, and uh, his heart, as time went on, became a Derby Red Raider. So, I mean, just the love he had for Derby and the kids he coached should never be forgotten.
Yeah, I still miss him. It's been probably around 6 years now since 2017 when he passed away, and
Yeah.
I still wear a bracelet for him.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, real great guy. And I mean, he was the public address announcer for the Derby football games for many, many years. And Tom Abel does a great job trying to fill those shoes, but nobody did it quite like Ronnie. I mean, Ronnie always had like a flair to it. He got the crowd excited. And I mean, like I said, he was just a passionate guy who really loved Derby. So, Jimmy, let me ask you this. I believe you played soccer up till you were like 8 or 9 years old. I think maybe third grade. So,
Yeah.
just talk about playing soccer a little bit. Did you enjoy it, or?
Yeah, it was fun. I used to play with like all these people from Milford because I would play in a rec league up in Milford, and I had a good time. It was fun. It was like most kids when they're young, they start off playing soccer and then spread out to different sports. But it was a good time.
Right. And I mean, let me ask you, that's a tough sport in the sense that you're moving around all the time. So you really have to be in shape, because if you're not in shape for that sport, it's really tough to do it. So if nothing else, it got you in good shape when you played out there, correct?
Yeah, I was in really good shape back then.
Right. So third grade comes, Jimmy, and you decide you want to play Pop Warner football. And let me ask you, I mean, were there some friends that talked to you about doing it? Was it just, were you going to high school football games on Friday nights, especially Derby games? And did you just see like the atmosphere and what it was like and say, you know what, I want to try this? How did that all come about?
I watched football with my dad every time it came on, and it was a good time. I would also watch the Derby High School team play, and I
Right.
just realized I liked this sport, so I tried it out, and I've loved it ever since.
Right. And Jimmy, the thing about Pop Warner, which is tough sometimes and people don't realize it, is you have to have a certain weight. There's a weight limit for Pop Warner, and you have to be able to maintain that. And I know, like, one of your might have been like your second to last season, whatever it was. You were trying to keep the weight off. It wasn't easy. So you decided after each practice that you were going to do a run and try to lose that weight. So talk about that a little bit.
So after every practice, I would leave, and my dad would follow me in his car, and I would run all the way down from the high school to the highway entrance. And it started off with just me running. And I remember this time that this person came up next to my dad and asked if I need help because he was following me in his car. And yeah, after that, my teammates just started slowly joining in. And by the end of the season, we were all running together after practice.
Right. And I'll tell you what, Jimmy, you talk about your dad. I mean, it had to be very fortunate for you and very rewarding for you to be able to play these sports with him. And again, I'm sure there were times when you guys argued after a game or after practice and stuff like that. That's what fathers and sons do sometimes. But I'm sure you wouldn't have traded those years for anything. And I would say he was probably your favorite coach of all time, correct?
He is one of them, but it's kind of hard to compete with Coach Ron.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, just being able to play with your father and he got to coach you, and I'm sure that was a great feeling. I mean, that had to be something that, like I said, was very rewarding for you. And a lot of kids, don't always get that opportunity. So the fact that you did, you had to really love that.
No, yeah, I missed those years. I wish I can go back to them. And it was probably one of the best times in my life when I was able to talk to my dad about problems I had on and off the field.
Right, exactly. And I mean, like I said, always a big supporter of yours. He always encouraging you to do your best, but at the same time, uh, he was rooting for you every step of the way. So, Jimmy, let me ask you, what was the most challenging thing for you in the beginning for football? Because again, it's a contact sport. There's a lot of hitting that goes involved. I mean, Pop Warner practices sometimes could be very tough. I mean, that's where you do all your hitting. So, what would you say was the most challenging for you early on?
So the most challenging was probably trying to learn the game itself because I had never really played football itself before. And
Right,
then when I finally got into the gist of things, it just kind of clicked. And then all my friends started to join in, and it was just a really good time.
right. And the thing is, too, Jimmy, when you're playing a grueling game sometimes and you got to be out there uh, hitting heads and doing a lot of hitting, and there's so much physicality that goes into it. When you do win those special games, they have to be so, you probably appreciate them so much more because you know what the struggle is like between practice all week and then the game itself. You know that it's a grind and it's not an easy sport to play.
Yeah, it was tough, but I had a really good time playing with my friends. Kind of just kept me up.
Right. This picture right here obviously is, I don't know what year this was, but this is going way back. Probably, I would say probably like around 2014, 15. But I mean, it's remarkable to think that here you guys are as young kids and you're still friends to this day. And I mean, that's the thing that's very special more than anything else, Jimmy, is these guys have always remained your friends. Obviously, you don't see each other as much as you like because school has kind of interfered with that. But it doesn't matter how much distance there is. You guys have really kept that friendship going.
Yeah, I even with Jeff being at my school, it's kind of tough with his schedule as well to see him even up at school.
Right.
But it's always a good time when I am able to finally see them.
Exactly. Jimmy, one of the things that let's get back to your baseball career for a minute, but you played on a team called the Braves, and I think in the 3 years you were on the Braves, you guys won the championship 2 out of those 3 years. And I mean, just talk about what that's like, and what is the feeling like when you win a championship? Because again, whether somebody said it best, I think Paul O'Neill said it years ago. He said it doesn't matter if you're in little league, high school, the pros. When you win a championship with your friends and teammates, it's very special. So just talk about those years.
Yeah, it was very special winning a championship, especially with my best friends that I've known for most of my life. I still remember a picture we had taken after we won the championship. All of us were on one knee with our finger up in the air, showing a number one symbol.
Right. And I mean, that just had to be so special for all of you guys. And I mean, you could kind of look back at it now because you're young then and you love the championship and it's very rewarding, but at the same time you're young kids, so you don't really take it in as much or realize what a big deal it is until you get older. But you look back on it and you see how difficult it is to actually win one. Had to make you very proud that you guys are able to win one, never mind two.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of winning two, even though we did have a star player on our team. My first year we won. We had
Right.
Tom Abel. He was one of the best players I have ever seen.
Yeah, he phenomenal player, and unfortunately, his football career, his senior year, got cut short due to an injury, and I always felt bad for him because he was just a tremendous athlete, tremendous player for Derby. Jimmy, you played for a team called the Brooklyn Dodgers as well, and you guys also won a championship there. And if I recall, it was one game where you caught the ball all the way at the right field fence and threw a runner out at third. So just talk about that feeling because again, hitting is important, no doubt about it, but defensively it's very important to make sure that you're making the big plays, and you're not going to make a better play than the one you did that game.
Yeah, so they hit the ball over my head, and I ran back to the fence. I remember throwing it to Jeff, hoping I didn't either overthrow it or underthrow it, and it
Right,
landed in his glove, and he was able to tag him out. It was actually Damian Caruso that he tagged out at third. It's pretty funny. We're all still friends
right,
these days.
exactly. And also, I believe a kid by the name of Robert Wolf, I hope I'm saying his name right, he took a shot to the leg early on in the game, and he stayed in there and fought it off. And I believe he struck out the last batter to win that championship. So, I mean, just talk about playing with teammates like that who had a lot of heart and they were going to go out there no matter what. And he's a young kid. It would have been easy to come out of that game, but it was a championship game and there was no way he was going to come out, even though he took a line driver like he did.
Yeah, so I remember my dad was the coach of this team as well, and he went to go out to talk to him. He was actually going to take him out, but Robert wanted to stay in the game.
Right.
And after he threw that last strike, we all just got on top of him and dogpiled him. It was a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I mean, those are the things, like I said, Jimmy, that you can't put a price tag on because they're so special. They're so memorable. And one of the special things, too, Jimmy, that I know has been so, that has made you happy is being a big brother and seeing your little sister have success like she does. And your little sister, Cassie, who is just a phenomenal runner, does so many great things. And you by far are probably one of her biggest fans. You're always out there cheering for her. So just talk about the not only the the sibling relationship you have, but also as friends, because she's one of your best friends, I would imagine.
Yeah, so I always go into her room at night, just have some conversations whenever I'm bored or something I got to talk about. And definitely when she's on the field, I wasn't able to go to Oregon when she was in Oregon,
Right.
but I was watching her run that race. And when she overtook the other runner, I screamed, and I'm pretty sure my whole neighborhood heard me.
And that just had to be a great feeling, though, Jimmy. I mean, to see her do so well and to see that this was important to her. We know how much she loves running and she works so hard for it. Just being her big brother, that had to be something that you'll never forget and a great moment in your life as well.
Oh, yeah, I was very proud of her. I don't know where she gets it from. She's extremely athletic, and it just baffles me. But yeah.
Yeah, it really is. But, the two of you really work hard. And Jimmy, this brings me to my next question because as impressive as you've been athletically and the heart that you show, because again, you're not one of the biggest people in the world, but you play like a 300 pounder. But talk to me about academics, Jimmy, because you are an exceptional student. It started at Bradley School. And just talk about that a little bit because you have always maintained your grades and you've been a high honor student most of your life. Just talk about at a young age that when you realized that you really had to commit yourself to academics.
So it was mainly my parents that pushed me because they told me later in life it'll really help me, and it really has. It helped me get into all the colleges I applied to,
Right.
and it was really helpful. I tried my best, and it ended up paying off. So
Yeah, and the thing is too, Jimmy, I mean, it definitely paid off and you've worked so hard over the years to maintain that. Talk to me though, the first time that you found out you made honors or made high honors, what that was like because like I said, whether you're 7 years old or 20 years old, whenever you accomplish something like that in your studies and your grades, it has to be just in your eyes a tremendous accomplishment.
yeah, I remember getting my paper and running straight to my parents when I had honors and high honors.
Yeah, I mean, and what's that feeling like too, or Jimmy? I'm sorry, because at the same time you want to do well, you want to succeed, but it's important too to see the look on your parents' face and see how proud they are of you. So I mean, something like that just had to really make you feel very special about who you were and who you are.
Yeah, it made me feel really special. Also, the fact that I would probably get a reward for doing good in school because that's what they do most. They always say school first and then sports later,
Right.
and it really stuck with me.
Yeah, and let me ask you, Jimmy. Say like you're 10 or 11 years old, you got a big test coming up and maybe it's on a Thursday and it's a Monday. How much would you say you devoted to studying for like an important math test or social studies test? What would you say, what kind of work would you put in after school for that?
So honestly, I probably would because I was a kid and young. I probably would put sports first, but
Right.
it did end up. I would usually do it the day before and end up study like the night before,
Right.
nervous for the test the next day, but ended up paying off anyways.
Right. And Jimmy, we talked about your dad, we talked about Cassie, and you just mentioned your mother, but again, somebody who is just a big fan of her children and she just wants to see them do well. And she just, is booming every time you two do something special. So just talk about how important she's been in your life because, again, her and your dad have been your biggest fans as far as I'm concerned throughout your life.
Yeah, so my mom has always pushed me to do my best, and whenever I did do good, she would be very proud of me and made me feel very good about myself. And I would always like go to her first, mainly. Even my dad, like they would be the first to know if I did good in classes or good anything.
Right. And I mean, the thing of it is, too, Jimmy, is you probably, again, we've all gone through this when we're young teenagers. Sometimes we feel like our parents are bothering us too much. They're always harping on grades, or you got to make sure you're doing this right and you're making good decisions. And you probably at the time get very annoyed at hearing it. But I'm sure now, as a kid like yourself who is 21 years old, you really do appreciate the lessons they taught you in life. And maybe you didn't understand it when you were 12 years old, but you definitely understand it now.
No, yeah, now that I'm 19, I definitely understand why they did it. And it's definitely helped me throughout my whole high school, middle school, college career so far.
Right. So, Jimmy, let's talk a little bit about high school because, again, football and baseball have always been winning programs in Derby. So, you're entering your freshman year. Did you have the mindset that I'm going to continue to play football and baseball? I mean, were you a little hesitant to play one or the other, or were you all in?
Oh, I was all in. I knew I was going to play baseball and football, or at least try to be on the team.
Right.
And I was. And before I went to high school, I was on my last year of Pop Warner, and Coach George French, he was at one of the practices, so I got to know him. So I knew him before I even got to high school.
Right. And, it's interesting too, Jimmy, that we're talking about high school. You talked about Coach French and stuff. But the other thing too, Jimmy, is again, you weren't the biggest kid out there, and you were a lineman, if I remember correctly. So you had it a lot more difficult than some of the other kids because you weren't your typical lineman. I don't even think maybe you weighed 160 pounds at the most. So you're trying to go out there and play hard. But just talk about uh, the challenge you had trying to be uh, a little man playing in a big man sport, because you proved that doesn't matter the size of who you are, it's the heart that you have.
Yeah, so I remember going into high school not knowing whether or not I would be good at this sport anymore. And I just knew that I would try my best and just put it all out on the field. And it ended up paying off. And going up against some guys that are 200 pounds more than me, around that, 150 pounds more than me.
Right.
Scary, but I knew I had to try my best. I got knocked down a lot of times, but I always got right back up.
Yeah, you definitely did. And I mean, again, like I said, what's very impressive is you weren't the average lineman out there. I mean, you were, in a lot of ways, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Rudy, but in a lot of ways, I mean, you two were similar, because he wanted to be on that field all the time. He didn't care how tall he was, or if maybe he wasn't the most talented player. He wanted to be on that field at all times. And that's kind of how you've always been. And I mean, you were a type of kid that never missed practice. You were going to be there every day. I can remember talking to John D. Francisco, and he would just be so impressed with how you would be out there every day, hitting as hard as you could hit and doing everything you could possibly do to help the team win. So, I mean, that heart has always been there from the time you were a little kid, and it carried over to your high school career as well.
Yeah, I've always had a lot of heart, is what everyone's always told me, and it was a good time. I had a lot of fun playing. It's really sad that it's over now, but it is what it is.
So, Jimmy, let's talk about sophomore year, because, again, I believe Charlie DeCenzo and John D. Francisco joined the staff that year. And I always felt like kids should always have that opportunity to get to play for those type of guys at least one time in their career. And you guys were very fortunate. You were able to get them. And just talk about, Charlie DeCenzo was a legend in Derby football as a head coach, tremendous coach. Just talk about having those coaches for the 2 years they were there.
So they definitely knew what they were doing. It was like very hard practices, but it paid off in the end because we actually came together. We were one of the smallest teams in the Naugatuck Valley League, and
Right.
we still ended up cranking out some wins. So,
And Jimmy, one of the things that you did your sophomore year, which was really rare at the time, is at the annual Albarella banquet, you took home an award as a sophomore, and it's a big time award. It was in memory of Tim Garfalo, who was a Derby football player who died very young, and you won that award at the Albarella. And just talk about that a little bit, Jimmy, because that had to be a tremendous feeling for you as a young sophomore to win an award like that.
yeah, so it came to a surprise to me because I didn't know I was going to win anything. I was just there to support my other teammates.
Right.
Getting called up for the award, it was one of the happiest feelings in my life.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be special, because I mean, you're there at the banquet. You're not thinking about getting an award. It's the banquet at the end of the year. So when you do win an award like that, it just has to be a great feeling. And Jimmy, the other thing is too, your sophomore year, is the team got better and better. I mean, I think the year started where they went maybe 1-5, and then you guys, I think, won 3 out of your last 4 games, and you really came on at the end of the year. There was a big win against Crosby. I think you guys beat them by like 5 or 6 touchdowns. So each week the team was getting better. So you had to feel like that there was something special going on with Derby football that year.
Yeah, I remember. I don't remember if it was sophomore or junior year, but I remember we killed Oxford because they smashed our helmet, and we were not happy about that.
Right.
So we ended up just scoring touchdown after touchdown after touchdown, and we
Yeah.
just ended up tearing up at the end of the year.
Right. And I mean, like I said, you guys just seem to get better and better that year. And let me ask you, Jimmy, a lot of talk has been about they ended the annual Thanksgiving game between Derby and Shelton, and they just felt like it was time to move on from that game. And now Derby will play Oxford every year. They played them this past season. But how did you feel about that? I mean, again, I don't know like how much you knew about the Derby Shelton Thanksgiving rivalry, but you did go to that game a lot as a kid. So What were your feelings on that? Were you in favor of it? Were you okay with it?
So I wasn't in like on the team anymore, so I didn't really have a say either way. But I
Right.
did feel it kind of sucks because it's been a tradition and it just gets broken. I understand where they're coming from. There's such a big school. They got like 80 players going against 17, so it's kind of unfair.
Yeah.
But
Now let's talk about junior year, Jimmy, because you did get some varsity playing time that year, and the team didn't have a great record, but I saw a lot of improvements from so many people. Jeff had a tremendous year that year; he really did. And like I said, you got into the varsity games. You played a ton of JV that year. So just talk about your junior year. I mean, did you feel like? And unfortunately, we're going to talk about the senior year and how it got interrupted. But did you feel like after junior year you were going to go into your senior season with a great outlook?
so I believe my senior year, our team was going to be one of the best teams on the field. And I still think that to this day that we would have dominated the league
Right.
and we would have had a really solid record, at least way better than the years before and improved. But yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't happen. It was unfortunate. But one thing that you did do again your junior year is you took home another award at the annual Alberella banquet, and that was very rare, Jimmy. For not many people could say they took home two trophies over the course of their career at the Alberella banquet. But you did take home the Sparrows Award your junior year, and that had to be a great feeling. There you are with your dad, and there was a funny part about this because I remember they put Mike Silkoff on the trophy by mistake. So
Yeah.
I knew something was up when Coach French was taking the tape off and he started laughing. But I mean, what was it like to get another award like that? Because it has to make you feel good. Because if nothing else, Jimmy, you know the coaches have a lot to do with these awards. They talk about them, they discuss them. So it had to make you realize that your coaches saw the work ethic you were putting in every day, and they wanted you to be rewarded for that hard work.
So it felt really good, especially knowing that I won 2 awards for sports. Uh, I do remember that it did say Mike Silkoff, and we did get it corrected.
Yeah.
Um, but it was a good time. I remember my dad knowing already that I was getting an award that day because he came up to my dad, Bill Pucci came up to my dad and told him, "You're going to be very happy."
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, and I mean it was a great moment, and I was happy too, Jimmy, because the first year you won, your mother had an event that day; she wasn't able to go. So this time around, she was at the banquet, and she got to see you get that award, and I know that was special for you and very special for her. And I mean, like I said, nobody smiled more than your father when you took home that award. He was always happy for you, and I mean, like I said, just two great people who have always encouraged you to do your best and have always told you whether you succeed or not in these type of sports, as long as you're giving it your best, that's all they want from you. So I know they were always very proud of you in your athletic career. Yeah.
they showed out,
So
and
yeah.
my parents, especially my dad, was always the loudest on the field for me and my sister. I think anyone could just call out his voice; they know that it's him screaming for either of us.
Yeah, definitely. But always encouraging. I mean, never trying to be negative, always positive towards both of you. And I mean, that's the type of fan you want. And like I said, he was always cheering you guys on. So, Jimmy, let me ask you about baseball. I mean, sophomore year, you played some JV. I think the team almost made the tournament. I think they might have missed it by one game. I do think there was an upset against Ansonia, though, at Ansonia that year. So that was a great win. But talk about sophomore year. How did you feel you played that year? Were you satisfied with how things went for you, or did you feel like it was, you needed to work more? What did you feel about that year?
So I felt I did need to work more because I was on the JV team and I really wanted to make varsity.
Right.
And I definitely tried my best to make varsity for my junior year, but that ended up getting canceled.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And so let's talk about senior year, and it got cut short. I know they tried like a 7-on-7 thing, which you played in, and you were able to get a senior night, which we'll talk about in a sec. But it was like a very bittersweet senior year because you guys didn't get a season. As you mentioned before, you felt like that team would have had a great year. I thought that team could win 7 or 8 games that year. So it was very heartbreaking to see that you guys weren't able to get a senior season. And I, to this day, will always say that every high school kid in the state of Connecticut, America in general, really got cheated because they didn't get a senior year of football. So just talk about how disappointing that was, and what that's one of the things you go through with adversity, because you had to, persevere through that, and just talk about what that was like.
So I remember that we were all at the Capitol trying to protest and get our season back. There was way more people than I expected to show up. There was over 2,000 people there, I believe. And I
Right.
remember going with all my friends, riding up in the Jeep with the top off. And it really sucks that I got cut short, but we did get our senior year, our senior night, but we didn't get the burning of the shoe ceremony like most of the other seniors from years before, where we get to say our goodbyes to our teammates. So
Right.
it wasn't that great.
So talk to me about senior night, though, Jimmy. And again, it wasn't the typical senior night that you had hoped for, but you still got to walk on the field. You got to walk on the field with your family. You got to also have a senior night with your close friends. Just talk about what it was like that night for you.
So it was really rewarding walking onto the field and finally saying goodbye, but it was also a very sad day because I knew this was probably one of the last times I will ever step on this field being a part of the Derby football team.
Right.
And, it was just a sad day, but also a happy day at the same moment.
Right. And the thing is, too, Jimmy, though, you could look back on your football career and you can know that you did everything that you could possibly do to be as good as you could be. And again, we'll never know what senior year would have been like, but we do know this, that you were going to be on that field if you were given the opportunity. And when all was said and done, you let everything, let it all hang out on the field. And you could be proud of that, even though you didn't get the senior year you hoped for.
Yeah, I'm still very proud of it. I wish it could have been better and we did have a senior year, at least like a spring season or something to be able to finish out my high school career. But stuff happens.
Right. But one positive thing that came out of your senior year, Jimmy, is the baseball season did happen. You guys were able to have a baseball season. One of the most comical things, and I'm sure at the time your coach may not have been happy, but it was one of those things that kind of loosens the players up. Is you did something funny with the bat when you came up to the plate. So talk about that story a little bit, because that's one of the classic Jimmy Silkoff stories for sure.
So I've seen this thing on TikTok where they would take the bat out of their pants at the plate and trade it for a new bat that is in their pants.
Yeah.
And I decided to do it during a JV game. I actually have a video still on my phone of me taking the bat out of my pants after calling time. And
Right.
after every time I went up, after that, all the players on the other team would be like, "Where's the extra bat?" And I remember my coach coming up to me. He said, "You ever do that in a varsity game? You're sitting the bench."
Yeah, it was one of those interesting things for sure. I know it got a good laugh, and it kind of loosened the players up. And senior year as well, Jimmy, you guys had to go through some changes as well. Coach Fainer had left to go to Woodland, and you had Coach Swerve. And one of the big things for you that was a proud moment for you is you were elected a tri-captain. And I brought that up earlier. Just talk about what that felt to be selected captain that year.
So I was really surprised. I thought there was only going to be two captains, Jeff and Bryce. I knew it that it was going to be them two. And then I was elected by the coaches to also be a captain. I guess he saw that I tried my best on and off the field, and that's why I was elected by all the coaches.
Right. And again, that team was a young team, Jimmy. I mean, again, you had graduated some seniors, so and you guys hadn't played in a year. I think people forget that sometimes, but when you don't play for a year, it's tough sometimes to kind of come back out there and be successful. But that team got through the season. I mean, there was a few wins that were very big that year, and you guys and you also got the opportunity to have coaches Sal and Coach Riles on the staff as well, and that had to be very beneficial to you guys, because Riles, as you know, has been coaching over 35 years. Sal's a tremendous guy. I think he'll be a great head coach someday. And then Swerve, and the last few years, Coach Swerve has really gotten those teams better and better. So I really feel like that group that year and it's unfortunate Rios wasn't able to stay. But if that group had stuck together, I really saw great things eventually for Derby baseball.
Yeah, so Coach Sal was definitely a very good coach, and I know we were all hoping when Banner left that he was going to be the head coach, but we were still glad he was on the staff. And
Right,
Coach Miles is definitely like one of the most impactful like coaches on the field. And we're very happy to have him for the years we did.
right. So Jimmy, talk about senior night for baseball, and it's again, it's not the same as football. It's a little different. It was during the day, obviously, but this is the last time that you're going to play on a Derby field as a Derby athlete, and you guys also got to play on the Payton field for the first time. So that had to be very rewarding. Just talk about those two things: senior night and getting to play on that brand new field.
So senior night, it was definitely also bittersweet like football, but I got to play with most of my family's members there to see me play one of my last games, maybe ever for baseball. And it ended up being the last game I ever played baseball. It was
Right.
definitely fun being one of the first teams to be able to play on Payton Park. But like, it is what it is that the season's over now and it's all done and said. But it was definitely a good time to be able to play. Good feeling, and it was a good year.
Right, definitely was. And another kid, Jimmy, that I know you're very close with is, if I say his last name wrong, I apologize. But Jake Simonelli, am I saying it right? Or
Yes, that's my
yeah,
cousin.
or cousin, but still a great friend of yours. And just talk about what he's meant to you, because I know you two have talked many times throughout the years, giving each other great advice. So just talk about what he's meant to you.
Yeah, so when I ever have a question, especially when I'm in college, because he was in college before me, he always gives me advice on what to do, and it always has helped and worked. And he means a lot to me, especially when I saw him at any of my baseball or football games. It was definitely very important to me that he was there.
Yeah, definitely was, and I think that's Blaze barking. But
It is, yes,
uh,
he's
but
outside.
anyway, Jimmy, let's talk about your college choices and how many schools were you looking at before you decided with Western?
So I was looking at other schools being UConn, Oklahoma University, Sacred Heart, places like that, Albertus. And I
Right,
ended up getting accepted to all 7 of them, which was very rewarding to me, knowing that all my hard work in school before that had paid off.
right,
But I finally decided on Western New England University because I got an email saying they would give me a lot of money off if I applied now. So I did, and I got accepted. And I told Jeff about it. He's like, "Yeah, go there." So I did. It's even better now that I got a friend there that I've known my whole life since kindergarten.
yeah, it really is. And I mean, that's the thing too, Jimmy, is you and Jeff still get to be close to one another, because one of the toughest things about graduating high school, and everybody moves on, life changes, that's what life does. But it's always sad when you do leave people, when you have to leave friends that you've known your whole life, because they do become family.
Yeah, I see Jeff is like a brother to me. Like most other people, like Jake Cook's like a brother to me, Bryce Cotter, Cody Fleischer, all of them. It's
Yeah,
been really impactful having all of them in my life, and it's definitely helped me get through the years.
right. So let's talk about graduation, Jimmy. And obviously, you graduated with honors. You had a tremendous high school career, not just athletically, but you know, academically. I mean, a great scholastic uh, athlete and stuff like that. But talk about graduating. What was that like that day? Because again, you guys got to have a great graduation. You got to walk on that field. Had to be a special moment, and it was like uh, completing a journey in a lot of ways, because now you'd finished one chapter in your life and you were ready for the next one.
Yeah, so it's definitely very impactful in my life, especially knowing that I graduated from high school and get to move on to the next level of my life.
Right.
I do remember when we were graduating, and I think people don't do it as much now. They throw their caps in the air, and when we threw our caps in the air, I remember a cap just flying right towards my head,
Uh,
and it was still a good feeling having all my family members there, and definitely be able to see all my friends and be happy.
yeah, I mean, a great moment. And that's the stuff about being a kid, Jimmy, that's always, you know, the priceless moments like that, because you get to have those moments as kids that maybe you're not going to have as much when, I mean, you'll still have great moments. You'll have kids someday, you'll get married, but it's not the same in the sense those moments with your friends and stuff, because those are really the most carefree times of your life when you're in high school.
Yeah, I basically got to do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. And it was definitely fun going out with my friends and having a good time. Like we would always go to the basketball games to go watch our friends play. And it used to be like a can of soup or something to get in. And it was just
Yeah, definitely. So, Jimmy, talk to me about college. How you've already completed 2 years, so you're halfway there. I mean, you got 2 more years to go. I'm sure you'll go for your master's because that's the type of kid you are. But how has it been? And I mean, let's put it this way: you have continued to shine as a, again, academically. I mean, you made Dean's List 2 years in a row. Just talk about what the experience has been like being at Western New England.
so it was definitely more like freedom I had because I was about an hour and a half away from my parents.
Yeah,
And I got to really do a lot more stuff and meet new people, make new friends. Like I'm going to have new roommates next year, and
right.
it's going to be a good time. I made Dean's List 3 out of the 4 semesters I attended Western University, and
Right.
it's definitely been a really good experience. And I got another 2 years left, and then another for my master's. Like you said, I got into the program with the expedited masters, so I only have to take one more year to get it.
Right, definitely. And Jimmy, what it's I don't it's kind of unfair to ask you to look ahead, but where do you want to be in your life in the next 5 years? Where do you hope to be at that point?
So I hope to be in an accounting firm, hopefully with a job locked down, and I'm hoping to get an internship soon, so I can further myself with my accounting career.
Right. And I think that's awesome. I really think what you're doing in your life is just tremendous. And I mean, you're setting a great example to so many kids who are going to start college. I mean, you really are somebody that people could definitely emulate. But let me ask you, Jimmy, what advice would you give to kids who are going to be starting college in the fall? What would you tell them?
So definitely try your best to make friends immediately because once you find your friend group, you'll definitely find your place in college, and it's very helpful if you know a lot of people. Like I know half my campus because it's a small school, like Derby was. And it's very helpful knowing everybody because if you got nothing to do and you want to go out with some friends, you know a lot of people, you go out with your friends. Definitely making friends is one of the best benefits because if stuff you don't
Right.
understand, and probably the best advice is just to make friends as soon as possible.
Right. And that's awesome advice. It definitely is. One of the things I want to talk about, Jimmy, before we go is it's always about giving back and how things become full circle. So while you were in high school playing football, you also returned to Pop Warner as an assistant coach. So just talk about going from a kid who played Pop Warner for so many years and now you were giving back to the program by being a coach. Talk about what that was like.
So I kind of saw myself in all those kids that I was coaching. And it was always after practice, I would walk up there. I would be a little late because practice ran a little late, but I would always walk up there and try and help out the best I could. It was definitely fun being back up there. And I understood what they're going through, especially because I've been there. It was kind of heartbreaking to see that there was only one like part of the program left, though, with just one team left in the whole program of Pop Warner. But
Right. And I mean, again, would that be something though, say 10 years from now, if you have the ability to do it, have the time to commit to it, would you go back into coaching football or baseball?
I would totally take it to be any part of a sport that I love, especially if it means I get to help other kids learn and love that sport.
Right. And I think that's great. And before we go, Jimmy, uh, what would you say at this point in your life? Again, you're just a young kid, 21 years old, but what would you say has been the most, um, I've used rewarding a few times, but what would you say has been the thing that you're most proud of so far in your life?
So definitely, I'm the most proud of my academics because I try my best and it ends up paying off. I'm also proud that I know a lot of good people and they help me get through all of my classes as well.
Right, definitely. And I mean, you look at where you are right now, Jimmy. I mean, you have definitely uh, continued to inspire so many people. I mean, you're doing so many great things in your life. And the thing is, too, you just got done with school and now you're working a full time job right now every day. You're up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're working all day. So you don't stop. You keep going. You want to continue to go out there and do different things and be the best you could be. And that's kind of the mindset you've always had in your life.
Yeah, I'm usually go getting when it comes to stuff that especially I want to do, especially like with a job. I need money. It's very helpful,
Right.
especially to pay for books and stuff like that up at college or even like my rent.
Exactly.
I definitely I like that I do want to go and get stuff, but it's also nice to relax sometimes.
Right, definitely. Well, Jimmy, this was a lot of fun for me. First off, congratulations on everything you're doing right now. More importantly, tremendous job making Dean's List because no matter what you did, whether it was football, baseball, soccer, whatever it might be, the most impressive thing about you is what you do in the classroom. And you are just really killing it right now. So, tremendous job. And I applaud you for that. So, congratulations on everything that you are doing in your life. I'm very proud of you.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for having me.
No problem. Well, there you have it, folks. You just got to know the man, Jimmy Silkoff, for the last hour. I've been fortunate enough to know him for over 10 years now. It's no surprise to see the type of things he's doing in his life. This is a kid who is always willing to give 150% to everything he does. He's the type of kid who has goals and he wants to achieve each one that he sets out to do. He loved football, he loved baseball. He went out there every day and he excelled at both of them and did the best he could possibly do. He was always a hard worker who always wanted to go out there and just play the game the right way. And he did that each time he was out there. But you look at him in his academics career, and I've brought that up many times because it is very impressive because the things that he's done are just phenomenal. Honors Society, Dean's List. I mean, you name it, this kid has been doing it. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens by hard work, it happens by dedication, and it happens by commitment. And this kid has devoted himself time and time again to be the very best that he could possibly be. You know, we talk about heroes, we talk about uh, superstars, we talk about all that stuff. But when you talk about incredible people, you really have to dust off the word for Jimmy Silkoff. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Tanishi saying good night, everyone.